Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on smart cities and creativity. My written contribution to this topical field tries to ask fundamental questions. It is about the relationship between art, artistic production, and what we might call the smart city. And to start, I wanted to ask very basically how we might understand the relationship between art and the city. In other words, I wanted to very fundamentally find out what happens when we consider these two things on the same analytical plane, so to speak, to confront them and kind of establish very elementary connections. And the reason for this almost basic approach is that it seems more likely to lead to a critical vocabulary on the subject and to enable a complexity that might be productive for further investigation. In this regard, a complexity that likewise does not succumb to a superficially arguable stalemate or deadlock between art and a technologically rationalized city is important. The overall aim then was to approach a preliminary understanding of how art is involved in the visual, material, and spatial processes that would produce the city or the smart city today and tomorrow, and to do this in a differentiated, critical way. In all, my contribution emphasizes especially how art is involved in the development of urban space, its textures, and its openness. So in this regard, I try to do three main things. First, I lay out a notion of the city and urban space as something that is experienced psychologically on the one hand and materially on the other. And I find this a very important thing to do, almost too easy, but I think it's a way to counteract prevailing ideas of the smart city that take its materiality for granted and focus mostly on technologically, economically, and politically relevant processes. And of course, this is significant when it comes to art in this context. So the sensory approach or route to the city that involves the eye, the body, and the skin is important here, I feel. After all, these are the means with which we perceive, move through, and interact with the city. Second, I take the city from this aesthetic vantage point and try to relate it to art, vision, perception, and the body. I propose that this is critical in terms of how a city is experienced. So I try to tell the story that art, urban space, and architecture are actually interconnected at the level of imagery, perception, vision, and representation. So historically, the image as an achievement of visual art came from architecture. It came from the wall, and it came from the ceiling, and the painted image henceforth referred to the window. Therefore, this image is a perceptual device that produces vision and space. And of course, this relationship continues to exist today, possibly in an even more pronounced way. Because certainly modern media and the screen have heightened the question of representation and visual experience as related to the moving, seeing, and touching body. So my conjecture is that the visual illusionistic operations of art would also contribute to ideas of urban space and how the city is represented and continually produced. Art creates difference, and therefore visual and material texture, a sensory openness, which might manifest in architecture, urban space, and the built environment. And there, questions of the homogeneity or heterogeneity of spaces, their permeability and malleability might come up. And perhaps public works of art in the city are actually a simple way to observe these matters. Third, I move away from the artwork and look at artistic activity as such. I suggest that making and showing art directly involves materially consequential processes, and that the activity entailed continually subverts and reconfigures the spatial, social, and also institutional order of the city. When artists make work, they activate, in a sense, an idiosyncratic array of media, spaces, social contexts, and institutions in which creation and subsequent exhibition take place. Thereby, a kind of network of action across different actors, places, and materials occurs. So in a sense, I would say that artists create their own technology, media, and organizational structures within a city. And this again relates back to the fundamental relationship between art and urban space. And of course, the means of creating and then gathering a viewing public are also within themselves carriers of a certain aesthetics capable of redrawing spatial configurations and creating new urban topologies. So overall, I think considering the relationship between art, artists, and the city leads to an array of fundamental questions, which concern the invention of urban space and technological development in the city. And finally, to close, I would also say that in a sense, the stories our societies tell about the city and its future would emerge in the arts and across creative endeavors, because technology and the digital sphere alone don't provide us with any narrative or aesthetic meaning, and in fact are quite incapable of producing the value judgments this would require. Thank you.